Hello and welcome to the Voodoo free video for Monday, September 16th. This is David, and I want to talk about futures rollover here this evening. We are in the week when equity index futures roll. So, for example, in the S&P futures, if you're watching a continuous contract symbol, you will see that there was this big, spurious 60-point gap up that we saw here Sunday evening. This move has nothing at all to do with a 60-point change in the price of the futures. All it has to do with is the fact that through the end of last week, to the left side of this line, continuous contracts were printing the September futures. Now, those September futures still trade today, and they will trade until the cash market open on Friday when we have triple witching, right? But starting today, most platforms for the continuous contract will start showing you the December futures, and because these futures contracts have built into them a time premium based on time till expiration, basically the holding cost of the futures until expiration, and the December futures have approximately 3 more months until expiration relative to the September futures. They trade at about a 60-point premium. So by starting to plot these new contracts, that relative to the old one, it shows as a 60-point gap on the charts. But if you're watching Sunday night and you looked at just the September futures, you'll see that they started to trade here Sunday evening at very much the same price that they traded Friday afternoon. Same with the December futures if you plotted just that. But it does give rise to some questions about how to use the Voodoo lines, because it can get a little tricky during this rollover period. If we look at the last several days, you can see how useful these Voodoo lines are. After all, here on Wednesday of last week, we came pretty much right down to a Voodoo skyline in the futures and turned right back up. Right? We ran into an upper skyline and got a little bit of a pullback, but climbed above, right back, tested that skyline from above, and it was back up. Initially ran into some resistance at the next skyline up and pulled back, tested from above on Friday, and then we headed, can't really say we headed up, but now we're trading above this Voodoo snowline level. And so the question that anybody knowing this would ask is, hey, if I'm watching these Voodoo lines here on the ES, and now we're looking at the December futures as opposed to the September futures. Well, when we were down here in the September futures, which was the front month contract, the active contract here on Wednesday, well, where would the December futures have been? Right about, well, not there, right about here, right? Not so. So one contract was coming down, testing a Voodoo line. This one wasn't, right? Same thing about some of these other swings. When we ran into short-term resistance, if we were watching another contract, well, that one would have been roughly running into resistance, not precisely, but near this Voodoo snow line. So that one would have worked out, as well as once we got above and tested from support, we would have gotten above and tested from support. But other levels like this one, right, wouldn't have lined up. So the question now is, does the September contract going forward respect these levels? Well, it did sloppily overnight, testing and holding, more sloppily in here today, coming a little bit below, but recovering above. And so one of the things that we'll want to look to for these levels that benefit from the fact that they very rarely change, which is a great thing in individual stocks, in indices, things that don't have these rollover gaps. And while we've seen over many years and years and actually decades of using these levels after rollovers, eventually they end up working well. But each rollover, I want to re-verify it and watch and see if we continue to see this kind of action, and convince myself for at least several days, if not longer, that the levels are still working well after after rollover. Now, there are a few other things that you can do in the meantime. One of them is simply look at the cash index with respect to its Voodoo lines. So watch the cash SPX against its Voodoo lines. Another thing that you can still do for another week is watch the September contract against its levels, right? Because that has a track record that we can see working well against those levels. And then one more thing that we can do in the interim is we can go to things like the micro Voodoo lines, right? Which are much closer together, right? And suffer from the same issues of the gap, right? You can see the Sunday night 60-point gap up in here, but what you can also see is how we bounce from skyline to skyline, resistance at a skyline, support at a snow line, right? And then bouncing, finding a little bit of short-term resistance before getting a little above and below the upper skyline into the close. So we'll see more interactions with the micro levels, and we might get an earlier indication that things are behaving well. Certainly, we're seeing exactly the same sort of, or exactly the sort of behavior we want to with these micros. They may only be for short-term swings, and seeing that the micros work will not necessarily tell us that the classic Voodoo lines will work with their levels, but as soon as we see these micro levels working, we can use them as short-term guidance until we get confidence in the long-term level. So a few different things that we can look at during what is typically a very tricky period with futures, that is the rollover week. It is tricky for a whole bunch of reasons, not limited to the Voodoo lines rolling over. There issues with using tick charts on futures, volume charts on futures. Certain indicators will have trouble during rollover. So a whole bunch of issues that hopefully will be cleared up soon. But I wanted to walk you through how to use Voodoo lines during this period. I hope you found it useful, and I will see you at the next update. Hey, David here with Simpler Trading. Thanks for taking a few minutes to watch this video. I hope you found it useful. And if you did, please help us out. Click the like button. You can also add your comments below. We love to read those and respond to them. You can also click the bell icon. That will alert you whenever we have new and updated videos. And if you want to watch us trade in real time with our own money, you can visit simplertrading.com to learn how to sign up. Until I see you again, as always, good trading, and we'll see you at the next video.